Welcome to the Mental Health and You podcast. This podcast brings you information and advice from across the Norfolk and Suffolk NHS Foundation Trust, with a range of teams, services and those who use them sharing their experiences and wisdom with us every fortnight.
And we're going to do a podcast today on what it's like for a veteran when they leave the armed forces and what it's like for the family of that said veteran. So I'll let Mike and Claire introduce themselves.
Hi guys, I'm Mike.
Hey, I'm Claire.
Do you want to say a bit about it?
Yeah, so I served 22 years in the Irish Regiment. I was discharged in March 21 with PTSD, chronic fatigue syndrome, chronic pain disorder. Me and Claire have been together for 14 years. Married for 14 years, together for 18.
Well done.
Claire's been my main support, my rock, my steady, everything through the date from when the PTSD come out, through the discharge, through the medical board process, pretty much every step of the way. And Claire pretty much seen me at my worst.
And navigating Civvy Street.
And navigating Civvy Street as well, yeah. And all the troubles that comes with.
So what was your main struggle then when you knew you were going to be discharged or leaving?
I think it's probably the same anxieties any veteran has of, right, I've got to be a big boy now. I've got to grow up.
Yours was also unfinished business, though.
Yes, there was a lot of...
You wanted to finish the promotion course and leave from your 22 under your term.
Yeah, and because the terms were different and they're more forced upon me because of circumstances I found myself in. But I still had the same anxieties of need to find a job, make sure the mortgage is paid, even though I still got my gratuity and my pension, we still need that financial support. And it was a case of, right, I'm no longer getting a war pension straight away. I'm no longer getting any compensation straight away, so I had to work. And I had its own anxieties with, well, be able to work or, was I still capable of working? Would I cope with working with people who weren't in the same mindset as me?
And then there was the added COVID pressure because we were just coming out of lockdown at the time.
Yeah. And I had near enough 2 years of what I refer to as bliss because I didn't have to deal with other people, which in fact sort of enabled my PTSD as well as placated it. It enabled the fact that I didn't have to deal with people and also kept it at bay. But at the same time, I had its own complication because it just added to the anxiety when I did have to start interacting with people again. Not just my close family network and friends, it was new colleagues, understanding new procedures, not being told, where to be, what time, not having identity because I wasn't wearing a uniform anymore. Even though I still had my own personal identity, the way I identified for 22 years had stopped.
So what do you think if you were to pinpoint one thing, what's the hardest thing to come to terms with out of it, out of the whole thing?
I think it didn't end on my terms. That is the hardest thing to cope with. I had a plan. We had a plan for the future. We made it together in some respects, and that wasn't in place anymore. And because of lockdown, I didn't go through the normal resettlement process everyone else did.
So do you feel that compounded everything?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I think because I was anxious for the PTSD already, it just added to that. And then it obviously started you in that downward spiral. Yeah. You start the negative thinking, and it was hard to manage.
Well, that's all going on for Mike. I bet. How did that put a lot of pressure on at home?
Yes, definitely. Trying to manage his expectations, let him realise, come to terms with the fact that he was entering Civvy Street where things wouldn't be done in a timely manner and he would need to adapt to other people's timeframes, get the kids back into school. Yeah, it was difficult.
So for you, you're having to manage the kids and Mike.
Yes.
We joke and said at the time I was the fourth child.
But being obviously just so everyone's aware, I've been supporting Mike on and off for about 4 years, 5 years. So I've watched this journey as well from sort of like within the family, but from outside the family as well. So I can remember conversations we had, sat in, and you were still in, and you had the drama of, not a drama, but it kept extending you. See, when you got your head around that you would be gone and this date, everything would be done and dusted, then it kept getting extended and you were staying in for longer until everything was sorted. That must have played a big.
It did, because it was like, oh, move the goalpost. It's like being on exercise again. You know, when you see the white angel, oh no, take it away.
It's because the light at the end of the tunnel
just
gets further and further away rather than closer.
And I think
But I kept trying to look on the bright side and getting him to look on the bright side. That meant we had the wage coming in for another couple of months.
Yeah.
And he didn't need to go and take any job that would be soul destroying.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also it made me realise, you know, how it's not an easy job being in the military, but at the same time, you know, the security you have, having that guaranteed wage no matter what. And
if you're injured, you get looked after in the dental, you got everything's there at your fingertips, isn't it?
And you don't realise, you know, having that gym membership, having that dental, having that medical, how much that means.
Not having to make do with statutory sick pay.
Yeah. Full pay.
And also that, you know, when I used to ring up them, if I needed some medication or anything like that, or I needed a medication review, or even to see the doctor to get something sorted, piece of paperwork, I could pick up the phone and have an appointment either the next day or that afternoon with the med centre.
Yeah.
And the big shock come to me when I booked to have a review when I first registered my civilian medical centre, so to speak, 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Unless it was urgent.
Yeah.
And you being under the impression you'd get NHS dentistry because you're a veteran.
And then that didn't happen.
Still hasn't happened.
No. Yeah. It's a bit of a shock. I think I struggled with that as well when I first made my GP. Well, I tried to avoid the GPs, but I think I got told when I wanted an appointment that I'd have to wait a month. But yeah, it's a bit of a shock to the system.
And also it comes with new anxieties and new pressures, so to speak. You go to meet you know your new doctor, your new nurse for the first time, and you list off your conditions, and they go, "Oh, what benefit do you want?"
Yeah.
No, I'm working. And the shock on their face when you say, "I'm working."
Yeah.
And I don't think they quite understand the mindset of.
And seeing a different person every time you have to read.
Oh yeah, go through it. No one likes having to tell your story again, and I think that's a big thing with most people you talk to. You want to tell your story once or explain your situation once. You don't want to have to keep doing it time and time again. So, what was how much pressure did that put on your mental health, and what was your lowest point in that, from that point of knowing you're leaving to leaving?
The last day when that was final, when they sent me through my discharge date, and literally like nobody actually was. I was calendar watching, clock watching, and I woke up the day after discharge, and that was it.
Yeah, Mr. Brewster,
the ultimate promotion, as we used to call it, but it really isn't. No. And I actually, you know, I'm going to be quite honest, I had a tear in my eye because, you know, a lot of veterans say their worst day in service is the day they leave, and it was for me.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm glad for that as well. It's a sad time because it's an end of an era, and you that chapter in your life's closed. So, from a family point of view and a wife and a mum point of view, Claire, what was that like for you?
It was difficult because he sort of tried to keep himself from the outside rather than integrate in. He would go in the garden and do stuff in the shed or knock down a wall for the fun of it, but constantly keep himself away from the family.
So how's that changed now? So you've discharged. How further on down the line now?
I think, you know, through all my trials of PTSD from the start until today, you know, we as a couple have developed more than we probably ever would have done if it wasn't for the PTSD. I mean, we talk a hell of a lot more than we did even before it all went wrong that day.
Yeah.
We're stronger for it as well because we're more aware of each other's mental health, and also we're quite open about our own. So,
yeah. So as a family, So
we are a family now.
Yeah, we are.
We're not me and the kids and Mike.
Yeah.
We are a unit now.
Yeah.
And I think, that's a spillover from the military as well. Yourself, if you're constantly deploying, you're constantly going away and exercise, it does come your work life, your home life.
Yeah.
You sort of can't.
You've got no choice. You have
no choice.
With the older two, I constantly did bedtimes because even when Mike was here, we didn't know how long it'd last. There was no point in messing up the routine.
Yeah.
Whereas now, I can tap out and go, no, I can't do it tonight. I need a night off, and Mike will go and do it.
Yeah.
Or we alternate and things like that.
But how lovely, because you're not under pressure. That's, I think, for me, leaving, that's the one thing I cherish the most, and that is not waiting for. You're not waiting for the phone to go and get called back in.
Yeah.
Or be told that you're going away tomorrow for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or whatever. And I think that is the bonus, and that's why my family life now top trumps anything.
Oh,
it wasn't just Mike that had to adapt, though. I had to adapt to let him in.
Yeah.
I was so independent with parenting and keeping the house going.
Yeah.
That I didn't realise it wasn't him being on the outside keeping himself. I was pushing him out because I wasn't asking him to take over and step in and opening the door for him. Yeah. I was waiting for him to be on again.
And I think our kids are growing massively. I mean, I'm the first one to always worry how my diagnosis has affected my children.
Yeah.
And we talk about it all the time, and we talk about it at quite depth. And I feel now they're probably more resilient than some other children. They're more rounded, and also they're more accepting than other children as well. They won't stare at people if they're different to everyone else. If they've got a prosthetic limb on, if they're not. If they're sat in the corner crying, they don't stare. They just it's refreshing in a way. And even my eldest, his school had commented on how mature and how rounded he is for his age.
Yeah.
So it has its positives, without a doubt.
Yeah. And from my point of view, to watch how you all are now from, 4 or 5 years ago, it worlds apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely worlds apart. And it's lovely to see, because I've been privileged and been on that journey with you, which is really nice. So
I would say you pulled your hair out at times, but that
haven't got any. Yeah. But but it's nice, isn't it? And that's just to be able to. And I always say, especially working with fellow veterans, I'm in a privileged position, same as you are with your role now, Mike.
Yeah.
We're in privileged positions where people allow us into their lives when they're at the lowest point. And I know I try never to forget that. So if you were to sum up, all right, it's the build-up, it's Armed Forces Week, the raising of the Armed Forces Day flag should all be happening around the country today. And then Armed Forces Week, Armed Forces Day on Saturday, the 29th. What does Armed Forces Day mean for you, Mike, on your own, but then you two as a family?
For me, it's a chance to reflect. We're the most, we all struggle with taking compliments and people, it's that gratitude that humbles you. It's humbling day because we do sacrifice like family time. People have paid the ultimate sacrifice, and it's that day set apart from Remembrance Day, where it's more a celebration of the armed forces rather than an act of remembrance. Yeah, and it's a chance to reflect.
Yeah,
and feel humbled for 24 hours.
Yeah,
makes a change.
Yeah, it does make a change. Yeah.
What about you, Claire?
I don't know. I find it's a good teaching time for the kids, but personally, I feel it's lost some of its gravitas in the community. In Civvy Street, it's not getting the publicity that it deserves and things.
That was going to be my. I think I can't remember the first Armed Forces Day, 2010, 2011, around that time, and I can remember I was at my I was in a recruiting job then, and I can remember having the recruiting caravan out in Bury St Edmunds in the Abbey Gardens, and it was heaving. They had a stage, and they had show on. It was all day long. So, and it was to me, as far as I can remember, the idea of Armed Forces Day was for the local community to thank their veterans and their serving personnel and host them and look after them for the day. And that quickly went from that being twisted to the army putting on shows and displays in wherever they are, or the forces, for the local community. So I think straight away, after a couple of years, it's lost its meaning. And I think maybe, I don't know, the Office of Veterans Affairs maybe want to take a look at that. But
yeah, I mean, I think it doesn't help that the operations the force are at the moment aren't, got as much publicity as Afghan, Iraq, and anything else had. And yes, we've got the Veterans Office Affairs, what we didn't have before, fighting the corner for veterans. But at the same time, it just seems, it's like you say, it's lost that gravitas, it's lost that weight. It's just another day to some people. And when we were on the stand last year in the Ark, one or two people actually said, "Oh, it's Armed Forces Day." It's like, really?
Yeah. I mean, our kids go to 2 separate schools and a nursery, and I haven't had anything publicised from them about it.
Yeah.
Yet they have quite a big military children's presence there, and there's nothing.
Yeah. So we're going to knock it on the head now, but if you've got one last thing you want to say before we close the podcast for this time, any thoughts, Tweed? If you haven't. But
I think the only thing having PTSD, and there's only me and Claire were talking about it the other day. Actually, there's only about 3 or 4 people alive on this planet who actually know what I go through on a daily basis. It goes back into that we don't want to unload our burden onto other people. And at the same time, Claire doesn't know it all, and Claire accepts that. I mean, it's not fair on her to know the intricate details, because we're fully aware of PTSD by proxy, and it is a thing. But at the same time, it's in the day she spends more time with anyone else, and it's having that ability to be open and honest with her, which has probably made us more than anything.
Yeah, so it's not just about the talking; it's about listening. Actively listening and taking it in, and having a dog to cry in the corner.
But also at the same time, it's, from my perspective, it does help when someone says, "Oh, wind your neck in." Have that handbrake, or that. Just think for a minute.
Thank you very much, and hopefully you've enjoyed listening to this.
Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to make sure you don't miss a future episode. Let us know what you thought of this episode by reaching out on social media. If you haven't already, listen back to previous episodes to hear some of the best mental health advice for you.